Hello, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. I want to talk to you a little bit about money, about my financial journey, about being in debt, getting out of debt, about how I manage money and how I manage my spending now whenever, let's be honest, there can be quite a lot of judgment associated with spending money on very expensive, pretty handbags, and it's not something that everybody understands. And I do get a lot of questions about that, but I also want to focus on how my background and my financial background has had an impact on my spending now and my relationship with money. And I did used to have videos about this on my other channel. I used to have videos about my financial background, about building a business, about debt, and about how my history has impacted on my financial management now. And I realise that that channel is no longer there, and there will be things that I mention in videos on this channel that there's now that gap, and there isn't an explanation of what I'm talking about if I mention debt or not coming from money or business. And it's something that you will ask me in the comment box, and I thought I would put a video on this channel to answer those questions really and explain the position. There's also a video on my old channel I used to have that was commenting on a video that Autumn Beckman did about effectively the rise from rags to riches and going from being very financially vulnerable to being in a position where you can afford to buy things like this and live this type of life. And I'm not saying it's, 5-star Maldives all the time, but let's be honest, there's a lot of money spent on handbags, and that's not something that everybody is able to do. And I will link Autumn's channel down below in the description box. Autumn also has a very, very interesting backstory. She tells it really well, she describes it really well, and if you're interested in this topic at all, definitely go and check out Autumn's channel. Now, in those videos, both Autumn and myself were talking about basically not coming from money, having a start in life that was not financially, privileged, where you started out financially vulnerable, where there was not a lot of spare money about. Personally, I come from a family with a single parent. My mum was a single mum with myself and my brother. She had 3 jobs, 3 difficult physical jobs that she had the whole time we were growing up to basically try and make ends meet and afford everything and provide for myself and my brother. And it is only with maturity and adulthood that I can look back and realise just what she did for us and realise just what sacrifices she made, how hard she worked, and what she put herself through to try and make sure that my brother and I had everything that we needed to have. Now, I'm not talking about things like this, but people don't need these. These are luxuries, these are additional things, this is not necessity. So I'm not talking about being able to buy the best clothes, the latest clothes, any of that, but that's not what's needed. What she did was work herself to the bone in very difficult circumstances to make sure we had what we actually needed. And I will never be able to thank her enough for that. I get emotional when I talk about this, and I will try not to. But as I said, it is only with maturity and adulthood that I can fully recognise that. When I was younger, I was, I'm sure, a brat, and I had a very limited window of insight, and I could only see what was exactly in front of me, and I was a child. And children compare themselves and what this person has and what that person has and what you don't have, and I'm sure that I was not the easiest person to live with, especially whenever puberty hits and you start to grow up. And I've always been determined, strong, stubborn, willful, all of those words that my mum would still tell you I am, so I'm sure I was no easy picnic. My brother probably a bit more, me probably quite challenging, but it is only now that I can really see what it was that she did for us, and it did allow us to have everything that we needed. I am also very fortunate that I live in a country where a very high level of education is available to you if you can academically reach it. It is not reliant on what you can afford. I went to a very good school. I went to a very good university. We did not have to pay fees for those because of what my family's earnings was, and I was given the opportunity to have such a high level of education, which I am fully aware is a privilege, and I am fully aware there's so many countries in the world that it wouldn't matter if you could reach those academic grades. If you can't pay for that level of education, you're not going to get it. And that's something that I'm very thankful for, and it's something that I very much appreciate and realise is not a given, and is something that is a privilege. Okay, not a financial privilege or not from a wealthy background, but that level of education being available regardless of your income is something that has allowed me to become the person I am and achieve what I have achieved. If I couldn't have had access to that, I don't know where I would have ended up. I don't know what I would be doing. Would I have a business? I don't know. I definitely wouldn't have the business that I have now because it's reliant on my qualifications. So that is something that whenever we look at people not just accepting where they come from and trying to better themselves and make more of it and build a business. Yes, there are hundreds, millions of entrepreneurs who can do that without formal education. I am very well aware that for me, in my example, for myself, it came from having the privilege of free education at a very high level. And I don't think that's something that can be underestimated, because there are so many people in the world that may have every bit as much intelligence, acumen, skill as I do at what I do, that couldn't have done that because the education isn't available. Yes, of course, I had to take advantage of it, and I had to accept the opportunity, and I had to work at the opportunity, but the opportunity was there. And that's something I don't think that we can just skim over and not acknowledge. So I did do that. I went to university. I've paid them now, but I did have student loans. I worked right through university. I graduated from university. I then took some time out to go and live in Australia, and it's such a shame that that was not as it is now, because could you imagine Dale and Meredith and I in Australia, and Connor? Oh my goodness, it would be so much fun. But I lived in Australia for a while. I then came back and I applied to graduate courses, and I got into a graduate school. Now that was not paid, but there were loans readily available that if you got into the course you were going to get the loan, and the loan was set up in a way that you could pay it back over 5 years once you finished your graduate schooling. And yes, you did have to pay it back, but it was worth it to be able to get that level of qualification. And whenever I qualified from that second set of studies, paying it back, yes, it was difficult, but it was something that was more than a good trade-off to have that qualification. So I finished those second set of studies. I got a job in my current profession which required more training, but I got that job. I was earning money. I had a lot of debt. I had debt from my student loans. I had my graduate loans, and I also had a lot of consumer debt, because one of the things about studying and working through university is, even with that and with the best will of the world, when you're paying for everything, I didn't have enough money to pay for it. So for a long time I used credit cards and loans and payday loans and all of the things that now give me nightmares just to survive. Not for any of this. This came a lot later, and this is not necessary, but just to be able to live, basically. So I was using debt to pay rent and to pay electric and to pay bills and to pay food, and basically paying it and paying a bit off and then using more, and it was kind of a cycle. And it wasn't until I was in my profession for a number of years that I was able to get on top of that, and I was able to clear my student debt, clear my graduate debt, clear my spending debt. And then whenever I opened my business, I took a huge chunk of further debt. I think at one point I was in debt to the tune of about £150,000, which is a lot of money for one person who is still in their 20s. I opened my business in my 20s. So I had that debt at a very, very young age. But as I said earlier, determined and was not going to be stopped, took on that debt to open the business and tried to make that work. And did make it work, but it took a lot of work. I sometimes despair and watch the videos that you will see on YouTube about how to have a 6-figure business, how to be a millionaire, and the person is telling you to have the right mindset. Now, listen, don't fall out with me yet. Mindset's important. You have to believe in yourself. You have to know that you can do it. You have to focus on doing it. I'm not saying that mindset is not important. A negative mindset will always make it more difficult and will always drag you down. But in my experience, and I can only talk for myself, mindset alone wasn't enough. Mindset alone wasn't going to build my business or earn the money that I earn. It wasn't that I sat one day and decided I'm going to picture my bank account with this amount of money in it, and the next morning I woke up and it was there. No, it took a lot of hard work. Yes, a positive mindset and believing in yourself is important, but in my experience, so is the hard work behind it. So is the doing the graft, working the long hours, putting the everything, sweat, blood and tears into it to build your business from the ground up. And that's what I did. And it took me a number of years. As I said, I was only in my 20s, probably had a lot more energy back then and hunger to do it. But I did that, paid off my debt as I went, paid off my student loans, paid off my graduate loan, then started on the consumer debt, then started on the debt from the business, to the point that I was able to have the business in a position where all of those debts were gone. But it did require from me at the outset a lot of sacrifice, because a lot of time and energy was spent doing that wasn't spent doing fun things. Now, I was never deprived. I never was locked in a tower and only working. I still enjoyed myself, of course, but it did mean the business had to be a priority for a long time, and there was a lot put into it to get to there. And that is a very quick summation of how I have got to where I am now. Coming with that comes baggage. And the baggage impacts on how I have always thought about money and managed money. One of the things that makes me do with money is I am uber organised with money, and I am strict with it. I have accounts for different things. I will be able to tell you the finances of my business pretty close to where they're sitting at any given day. I keep a very tight eye on that. I know what's happening. I know what's coming in, I know what's going, and I think that's very important if you're going to run a business. I know where things sit. And when it comes to managing my personal finances, when money comes in, there are automatic transfers which go out. Money goes into savings, to investments, to pensions, to children, to all of the things that are so much more important in my life than these. These for me come second, and I appreciate that everybody's position is different, and some people may think, well, I'm going to live my life and enjoy my life and I'm going to buy these and I'm going to worry about other things when I get older. That's fine. I'm only talking about how I do it, and I think this is a lot coming from where I have been, because I have known what it is like to really not have any money, and I don't want to leave myself ever in a position that I have all of these handbags, which yes could be liquidated and sold, but skipping past that, and I don't have enough money to pay my bills, or I don't have savings or investments or an emergency fund or money that if things go wrong or my children aren't set up. That's just not going to work for me. That is not the way my brain is wired. My brain is wired to make sure that my financial life is healthy and is intact and isn't organised before the money that's left over gets to do this sort of thing. And that is something that I will never change on, because it's the only way that I can comfortably spend money. And we're going to get to whether or not I even comfortably spend money, because I get a lot of comments from you guys in the comment box, and you're absolutely right, about stop apologising, stop dismissing your purchases, stop saying sorry for them, just own them and love them. And that, I am convinced, is something that comes from my background and about how I feel about spending this level of money on things. And I've talked about it before when I have in a video on this channel about why I hide my luxury purchases and dealing with judgment, and it must all tie back to that. And it's something that's very hard to shake, because I am now in my 40s. My business is established and successful, thankfully, thank you, and it is something that I continue to work in full time, and I continue to make sure is working. I do have other things. I now have other streams of income. I am not just reliant on my business. There's money coming in from other sources, and I have my financial life healthy. There are investments, there's this, there's that, there's property, there's things that go to other things that are looked after, and money that is there. So it's not the position that if I were to turn round and spend a lump of money on a few bags in a day, that suddenly everything's going to fall down. And that is the only way that I can feel comfortable with this sort of spending. But even with that, and even being so organised and so thought out, I suppose, I have financial advice, it's not all down to me, but having all of those other things looked after, even then, there is still an overhang on spending. And I talk to Deb from Wild Unfiltered about this quite a lot, and she will try to tell me to stop this and tries to help me to get out of this mindset, because I sometimes have to take a moment and remember where I am now. And my husband will say this to me as well. Look at where you are now. Look at what you can afford. Look at what you have achieved. Everything else is looked after. It's not that you're spending their children's inheritance. It's not that you're spending the mortgage money. So take a look and pause and take a moment to appreciate what's there, and stop beating yourself up about buying a handbag. Stop thinking that you can't afford it. Stop thinking that it's something to be guilty about, and stop thinking that it's something to be embarrassed about. I have no doubt that my financial background impacts on how I feel about spending now. I can feel guilty. I can feel that it is ridiculous to spend X amount of thousands of pounds on a bag, even though the money may be in the bank. I can sometimes really struggle with the ridiculousness of it and the guilt that I shouldn't be spending that amount of money on handbags. And I will think back to what that amount of money meant a long time ago. And what that amount of money would have meant when I was much younger, when my mum was working those 3 jobs, when I was first getting into debt, getting out of debt, managing the debt, which is a whole other story to itself. If you want to hear about that, let me know in the comment box. How to try and get out of debt, how to pay it. That's not easy. So sometimes I look at these figures and I think back then and I'm overcome with the guilt and I am overwhelmed by it. And I will retreat at times and struggle in my own head and be conflicted about what I'm spending. And it's no doubt because it's tied back to then, because it does not reflect, that level of guilt does not reflect where I sit now. And if I were to look at things dispassionately, I wouldn't feel that. It wouldn't have that type of pull. But I think, even though I'm in my 40s, I think when you've grown up a certain way and you've lived a certain way and had to manage a certain way, and I'm not saying I was hard done by at all. I was not. I was privileged, as I told you earlier, and I had my mum who would do anything for us. I had my brother. I had my education. I'm not saying I was hard done by. But when you come from that background, it is very hard to suddenly switch to being somebody else. And people who come from a financially privileged background will generally have a different outlook on where they are later in life and what they have and how they can spend that and how they can manage it. For me, coming from not that background, I drag a lot of that baggage with me, and it's not something that's easy to get rid of. And no matter how much therapy you have or talk to people, it can still linger. And it will make me at times feel guilty about what I spend. It will make me second guess what I spend. I will sometimes buy a few bags and then go into guilt mode, and I will have to let some go. Even if I'm not thinking about it at the time, it will be the only way to rationalise in my mind spending that sort of money. You also get the judgment from a lot of other people. Now, I'm getting better at dealing with the judgment, and Dale and I talked about this in a video recently on wearing luxury to the workplace and how to just block that out. And do watch that video because Dale has some fabulous advice in it, and she deals with this and she helps to mentor people and manage people, and there's great advice coming from Dale there, and I will link Dale's channel down below as well. But it's not easy. I didn't find it easy. I still don't find it easy, and I can be a person of two halves in that there will be sometimes I will do it, no problem. Whee! Spend the money, buy the bags, there'll be lots of unboxings and there'll be lots of things coming home and it'll be fabulous, and then I'll get the guilt will hit and then it'll go to the other side. So it depends probably where I'm at in that cycle. And I don't know if it will ever fully go away. I don't know if I will ever fully lose the person that couldn't spend the money and fully embrace this person. I don't know if I want to ever lose it, if we're being honest, in the therapy couch, because it very much keeps me grounded and it very much keeps my feet on the ground, and I will never forget where I came from. And I think if I were to lose it all completely and it were all to become too easy to spend or to not think about it or not rationalise it, I would be worried that I would lose that girl and I would lose that person and I would lose what I have learnt and who I have become, not in a financial way or a business way, but as a person going through that period of where I came from to growth to where I am now. So I don't think I completely want to lose it all. I would like to get some less of the guilt. I also, when I made the video about why I hide my luxury purchases, I think there's 5 reasons I talked about in that, and I will link that video down below. And I think that video is probably quite insightful into what goes on in my mind at times and how I try to rationalise these things, but also the negatives that come with it. And it's about not wanting other people to feel bad as if you're putting something in their face, says the person with a YouTube channel. I know, I get the irony and the contradiction about feeling guilty about spending it, about there's reasons in that video, and I think there are times that I will still hide my purchases. There's times I have bags here that I don't unbox for a long time, and is it because I almost feel guilty for going, here's another unboxing? It probably is. And all of this is probably tied back to the background as to how it used to be to earn money, to have money, and what a lot of money meant back then to what it means now. I used to think if I could save in my bank to having £100 in my bank, that was a lot of money, that was me doing well. And now I sometimes get scared about how that has changed, because now to me £100 in my bank is probably not a huge amount of money if we're being open. And sometimes it's hard to accept that change, but I'm working on it and I'm getting better. I definitely am getting better, but to say that there is no impact of my history and my background and the debt that I've been in on me now and how I manage money and deal with money and think about money and spend money would be telling lies. It would be completely and utterly hiding the truth. And yes, I do quite well with spending. I know that, and it's something I know, and I'm getting better at, about not letting the guilt impact on where we are now and spending what I have earned. And as I say, I never spend money that's meant to be going to other things. I am regimented with those different accounts. There is an account where money comes from for spending on things like handbags. All the other accounts don't get touched, and I do not cross those lines. I'm quite strict about that, and it's how in my mind I try to keep myself a little bit more sane. Do I sound sane in this video? Probably not. It's probably a stream of consciousness, but I wanted to give you this background about where I came from, about the debt, about getting to now, and how that has impacted on my spending as it is now. I will link Autumn's channel down below. Do check it out, because she also talks about this a lot more eloquently than I am, and making probably a lot more sense. But if you're interested in this topic, check out her channel. And that really is a summary, I suppose, of where I came from, where I've been through. There's obviously a lot more detail that has been skimmed over about the debt and about to now and shopping and spending on these sorts of things. But I can see the timer and I don't want this video to be 25 days long. But if there's anything particular in any aspect of this you would like me to talk more about, I can do a little money, life, business sort of series if you would like, and I can answer any of your questions or address them in a video. So if there are things about this you're interested in, for example the debt or whatever, just let me know in the comment box and I will get around to doing those videos to try and answer that for you. And I will try to be as honest and as open as I can be. Thank you so much for watching this. I know it's been a little bit different and maybe hopefully filled in a little bit of the gaps that some people have had. If you're not done with me yet, I'm going to leave another video on the screen that will be a little bit lighter and a little bit more handbag and maybe a little bit more fun. If you enjoyed this one in any way or found it interesting, please do consider giving a thumbs up. If you haven't done so yet, please do consider subscribing. And if you're not done with me yet, check out that video. And please, thank you so much. Please, thank you, please. Please and thank you so much for being here. Take care, and I will see you again in the next one.